from members of the same family biting opponents to sucker punches and downright assault to players going into these stands and fighting with the fans. You never know what's gonna happen next in a hockey game. These are the 20 most disrespectful moments in hockey history. And it all starts when two members of the same family have been sanctioned for biting opponents during a game. The father starts us off at number 20. May 22nd, 1986, during a melee after a 1-0 win by the Montreal Canadiens over the Calgary Flames in Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final, the Montreal Canadiens' Claude Lemieux bit down on the finger of Flames Jim Pinsky, and Lemieux was not suspended. I didn't know they allowed cannibalism in the NHL, Pinsky said after the game. He later got a tetanus shot. We'll see Lemieux again later on this list doing something even more crazy. But 35 years later, we find out that biting opponents is apparently hereditary, which brings us to number 19. Claude's son, Brendan, was playing on the Los Angeles Kings against the Ottawa Senators on November 27, 2021. Brendan got into a fight with Senators captain Brady Tkachuk, and Lemieux bit Tkachuk twice. After the game, Tkachuk said, "I think it was the most gutless thing somebody could ever do. Not even a children bite. This guy, you can ask him any one of his teammates. Nobody likes to play with him. This guy is a bad guy and a bad teammate. He focuses on himself all the time. Like father, like son, but the son receives a 5-game suspension. While the Lemieux use their teeth, the Boston Bruins' Brad Marchand prefers to use his tongue." That's number 18. During the 27-18 season, Marchand, who is now the Bruins captain, began to lick players in the face in order to try and get under their skin. His victims that season were Leo Komarov of the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning Ryan Callahan. He explained licking Callahan's face. "His visor was in my face, and I was like, this is probably gonna piss him off. So I tried to do it, tried to get him to hit me, and drew a penalty, and it kinda went the other way." However, number 17 shows that getting your face licked is nothing like having it get hit with a stick. In October of 1978, in a game between the Colorado Rockies, now the New Jersey Devils, and the Detroit Red Wings, Colorado's Wilf Haymont took a two-handed baseball swing and connected it with the face of Detroit's Dennis Polonich. He missed 18 games, suffered a concussion, severe facial lacerations, and a broken nose that required reconstructive surgery. That resulted in a lifelong breathing problem. Polonich was also never the same as a hockey player after the incident. Usually, two enforcers battle on even terms, facing each other in a fair fight, but number 16 shows that that's just not always the case. With 4.6 seconds to go in the game between the Boston Bruins and the Vancouver Canucks on February 21st of 2000, Boston's Marty McSorley swung his stick and hit Donald Brashear in the head. Brashear had to be carried off on a stretcher. He lost consciousness for a few moments and sustained a concussion. He missed several weeks, but ultimately recovered completely. McSorley was suspended for the remainder of the season and the playoffs, missing 23 games, and he never played in the NHL again, so you could basically say he was banned. He was also charged with assault and was found guilty of assault with a weapon by a judge in the Provincial Court of British Columbia and was sentenced to 18 months probation. That trial was the first for an NHL on-ice attack since Dino Ciccarelli's trial in 1988, and that's number 15. Ciccarelli, who is in the Hockey Hall of Fame, in a game between Ciccarelli's Minnesota North Stars and the Toronto Maple Leafs played in Toronto on January 6, 1988, Ciccarelli attacked the Maple Leafs' young prospect Luke Richardson with his stick. Ciccarelli hit him twice with his stick, but Richardson was not injured. Richardson then retaliated, punching Ciccarelli in the mouth. Ciccarelli was charged with assault, and after the judge found him guilty, he served 1 day in jail. By the way, Richardson is now the coach of the Chicago Blackhawks. Number 14 also led to a trial and a lawsuit. Paul Bartuzzi sucker punched Steve Moore on March 8, 2004 in a contest between the Vancouver Canucks and the Colorado Avalanche. In the game in Vancouver, the Canucks' Bartuzzi jumped the Avalanche's Moore from behind, punched him, and then landed on top of Moore, driving him into the ice. Bartuzzi had previously tried to instigate a fight with Moore. Moore was knocked cold by the first punch and laid motionless for 10 minutes. He suffered 3 fractured neck vertebrae, facial cuts, and a concussion, and never played again. Criminal assault charges were filed against Bartuzzi, and a civil lawsuit was filed against Bartuzzi and the Canucks. Bartuzzi was suspended for the rest of the season, pled guilty to the assault charge charges after arranging a plea bargain. He got 80 hours of community service and a year of probation. The civil suit ended 10 years later with a confidential settlement. Accidents also happened, and that's how number 13 happened. During a 5-2 win by the New York Rangers over the Los Angeles Kings in late February of 2023, Rangers defenseman spat on Kings rear guard Doughty. But Miller said that was not on purpose. What happened was so completely accidental, Miller said in a tweet after the game. I would never intend to do something like that on purpose. It goes against everything I am as a person and a player. Disrespect does not just come from a player on the opposing team. Sometimes it comes from your own coach, which is the case for number 12. On December 2nd of 1995, the Detroit Red Wings defeated the Montreal Canadiens 11-1 in a game at the old Montreal Forum. 9 of those goals were against future Hall of Fame goalie and Montreal icon Patrick Roy. The usual practice in hockey is that if your team is getting shellacked by giving up a lot of goals, you pull your starter, particularly a great goaltender like Patrick Roy, usually after 4 or 5 goals. The thinking is that it's just clearly one of those nights, and you get your starting goalie out of there just to give it a little break, and really just out of respect for the guy. But the Canadiens coach Mario Tremblay did not see eye to eye with Roy, and he did not pull the star goalie until after Detroit's 9th goal. Roy was inset. Instead of the owner's box being high in the stands, it was right next to the bench, only a few feet away from where the coaches stood. And after coming off the ice, Roy brushed past Tremblay, walked into the owner's box, said a few words to team president Ronald Corey, and went to the locker room. Later, it was learned that Roy had told the owner, "This is my last game as a Canadian." 4 days later, Roy was dealt to the Colorado Avalanche in a 5-player deal. Tremblay's disrespecting of Roy had cost the teams one of the greatest goalies in NHL history. The Red Wings were on the receiving end of the disrespect in number 11. Sidney Crosby is one of the greatest players in NHL history, but he committed a major fox pass just after the Pittsburgh Penguins won their first Stanley Cup. After the end of a playoff series, the tradition in the NHL is for members of the team to line up and shake hands. But after Game 7 of the 2009 Stanley Cup Final, in which the Pittsburgh Penguins beat Detroit to win the cup, Crosby did not join the handshake line, but celebrated with his teammates who had already shook hands with the Red Wings players. The two teams had also met in the Cup Final in the previous season, with Detroit winning in 6 games. Sid the Kid is a future Hall of Famer, but this was not a Hall of Fame move. Neither is hurling insults that refer to the weight and dietary habits of someone else, which brings us to number 10. New Jersey Devils coach Jim Schoenfeld went there after the Devils had been beaten 6-1 by the Boston Bruins in Game 3 of the 1988 Prince of Wales Conference Final. After the team was leaving the ice, Schoenfeld yelled a few unfriendly things towards referee Don Koharski, including calling Koharski a fat pig and telling him, "Have another donut." And when the NHL failed to suspend Schoenfeld, the entire officiating crew refused to work Game 4 in support of Koharski. So the league scrambled to get 4 replacement officials to work the game. Instead of wearing the normal official striped shirts, they wore yellow jerseys. Sometimes an offense is so disrespectful, it changes the rules, such as number 9. 20 years later, in Game 3 of the 2008 Eastern Conference quarterfinal between the Devils and the New York Rangers, New York's Shawn Avery had an idea. While standing in front of the opposing net on a power play, Avery did not just screen the goalie Martin Brodeur with his body, but turned to face Brodeur and began waving his stick in the goaltender's face. Avery scored on the power play minutes later, and the Rangers went on to win the game 4-3 in overtime. The NHL quickly amended the rules, making what Avery did an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, and this has since been known as the Avery Rule. Number 8 did not produce a rule change, but it did result in a lengthy suspension. While Darl Hunter was a good player and had a long, solid NHL career, he will mostly be known for one quite disrespectful and violent act. Late in the deciding Game 6 of the 1993 Pacific Division semifinals between Hunter's Washington Capitals and the New York Islanders, Pierre Sturgeon stole the puck from Hunter and scored, clinching the game and the series. Hunter was trailing Sturgeon on the play and checked the Islanders forward from behind well after the goal. Sturgeon suffered a separated shoulder. Hunter was then suspended late in the deciding Game 6 of the 1993 Pacific Division semifinals between Hunter's Washington Capitals and the New York Islanders. Pierre Sturgeon stole the puck from Hunter and scored, clinching the game and the series. Hunter was trailing Sturgeon on the play and checked the Islanders forward from behind well after the goal. Sturgeon suffered a separated shoulder. Hunter was then suspended for the first 21 games of the following season. Number 7 led to a suspension and illegal action. Dave Forbes, who played with the Boston Bruins but ended the eye socket out of the Minnesota North Stars Henry Boca in games 1975 in Minneapolis. It left Boca with limited vision in his right eye. Forbes was suspended for 10 games and charged with assault. Unfortunately, the trial ended with a hung jury and the charges were not refiled. Forbes and the Bruins settled with the Boca in a civil lawsuit, with Buka receiving over $1 million. Number 6 brings us back to Claude Lemieux, but this time, he caused a lot more damage than just bite marks. In the deciding Game 6 of the 1996 Western Conference Final, in which the Colorado Avalanche defeated the Detroit Red Wings, Colorado's Lemieux shoved Detroit's Chris Draper into the boards from behind, face first. Draper suffered a broken jaw, fractured cheekbone, broken nose, and damage to his right orbital bone. Lemieux received a 5-minute major and a game misconduct and was suspended for 2 games by the NHL. The hit also began the rivalry between the Avalanche and the Red Wings, which lasted into the early 2000s. The mention of Lemieux still reminds us of biting, so here's another chopping story at number 5. In Game 1 of the 2011 Stanley Cup Final between the Boston Bruins and Vancouver Canucks, Vancouver's Alex Burrows decided to chomp down on the glove of Boston's Patrice Bergeron, which was in Burrows' face as the pair battled for position. Burrows was not suspended. Number 4 was a case of disrespect to a piece of an opponent's equipment. It happened during the 2011-12 season in the game between the Dallas Stars and Winnipeg Jets. After a skirmish between the two teams, the Stars' Adam Burish picked up the glove of a Jets player, and as he was being escorted to the penalty box by one of the linesmen, he got near the glass and threw the glove into the stands. Apparently, it belonged to Winnipeg Jets' Tanner Glass, because Glass rushed over and tried to punch and fight Burish, but both linesmen restrained Glass. The fans are the NHL's paying customers, but Mike Milbury didn't think so in number 3. In 1979, during a bench-clearing brawl in a game between the Boston Bruins and New York Rangers at Madison Square Garden, few Boston Bruins decided to climb into the stands to do a battle with a few fans. That included Milbury, who stole a man's shoe and started beating him with it. Very disrespectful to your customers. Number 2 takes us from a shoe to a helmet. In 2012-13, in a game between the Winnipeg Jets and the Montreal Canadiens, during a scuffle between Winnipeg's Evander Kane and Montreal's Alexei Emelin, after Emelin hit Kane in the face with a forearm, Kane eventually ripped Emelin's helmet off and threw it at him. Luckily, Emelin ducked. Number 1 is a case of a player flinging a piece of his own equipment. In 1998, Hall of Fame goalie Dominic Hasek, then with the Buffalo Sabres, had enough after he got run over by Washington Capital Peter Bondra. So, the always unpredictable Hasek hurled his blocker at Bondra. There you have it, the 20 most disrespectful moments in hockey history, and that's a lot of disrespect. What will be next? Comment below which of these moments you think is the most disrespectful, and why do you think so? To see more hockey videos, don't be a bender, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, help the algorithm, help us grow, and ciao.